What happens if you put your head inside a particle accelerator while it is running? Physics says you die instantly. Biology says your brain turns to liquid. But in 1970, a Soviet scientist took a beam of protons, moving at the speed of light directly through his skull. He absorbed a dose of radiation 400 times higher than the lethal limit. Yet, he did not die. Instead, something even stranger happened to his face. To understand how Anatoli Bugorski became a medical anomaly, we need to go back to the height of the Cold War. We are in Proton, a secret city in the Soviet Union, hidden from the maps and the eyes of the West. This was the home of the U-70 Synchrotron, the largest particle accelerator in the world at that time. It was a massive underground ring, 1.5 kilometers long, designed to smash atoms together to unlock the secrets of the universe. Working there was not just a job, it was a duty to the state. Anatoli Bugorski was a brilliant 36-year-old dedicated to maintaining the beast. A particle accelerator works like a giant cosmic slingshot. It uses powerful magnets to accelerate protons until they reach nearly the speed of light. The energy inside that tube is unimaginable. It is basically a focused death ray. The safety protocols were strict. Massive concrete doors, flashing lights, and electronic locks were supposed to prevent anyone from entering the tunnel while the beam was active. But this was the Soviet Union in the 70s. Equipment malfunctioned, lights burned out, and sometimes the pressure to keep the machine running was greater than the fear of safety violations. On July 13th, 1978, Bugorski noticed a malfunction in the detectors. A piece of equipment inside the tube was not responding. It was a routine check. He called the control room to switch off the beam. He waited for the signal. He saw the safety light over the door turned off, indicating it was safe to enter. But there was a problem. The bulb in the safety light had burned out. The machine was not off. It was running at full power, and Bugorski was walking straight into the path of an invisible force, capable of melting steel. He opened the heavy door, stepped into the concrete tomb, and approached the tube. He placed his head inside the accelerator channel to inspect the equipment. He was now in the direct line of fire. What happened in the next nanosecond is the only recorded case in human history of a high-energy proton beam interacting with a living human brain. He didn't feel pain. He didn't feel heat. But he saw something that no other human has ever seen and lived to describe. He saw a flash of light brighter than 1,000 suns. Not with his eyes, but directly inside his brain. Stay with me, because in the next chapter, we will reveal exactly what that beam did to his anatomy. The doctors predicted he would be dead in 2 weeks. They were wrong. The horror was just beginning. Bugorski pulled his head out of the machine. He stood there, confused. The flash was blinding, but there was no blood. There was no burning smell. His body felt normal. Being a dedicated Soviet scientist, he did not panic. He did not run screaming. In fact, he didn't even tell anyone immediately. He finished his shift, wrote a report about the faulty equipment, and went home. But the physics inside his body was already starting a chain reaction of destruction. The beam had entered the back of his head, passed through his occipital lobe, traveled through the middle of his brain, and exited through the left side of his nose. The cross-section of the beam was small, only about 2 or 3 millimeters, but the energy density was astronomical. We measure radiation absorption in Rads, or grays. A dose of 500 Rads is considered lethal for a human being. It kills all your bone marrow, destroys your immune system, and you die of infection or bleeding. Based on the energy of the U-70 Accelerator, scientists estimated that Bugorski absorbed 200,000 Rads at the entry point and 300,000 Rads at the exit point. Let me repeat that. 300,000 Rads. That is 600 times the lethal dose. Theoretically, his head should have been vaporized, or at least, the radiation should have cooked his brain instantly. That night, the symptoms began. The left side of his face started to swell uncontrollably. It ballooned up, making him unrecognizable. He couldn't hide it anymore. He was rushed to a clinic in Moscow, specifically built to treat radiation sickness. This was the same clinic that would later treat the firefighters from Chernobyl. The doctors looked at him and shook their heads. They had never seen anything like this. They admitted him not to cure him, but to observe his death. They wanted to study how a human body shuts down after such a massive exposure. They expected him to develop seizures, go into a coma, and die within days. But days passed. then weeks. Bugorski was alive. He was conscious. He was talking. How is this possible? The answer lies in the nature of the beam itself. Unlike the radiation from a nuclear bomb, which spreads everywhere like a wave, the proton beam was a laser-focused needle. It didn't irradiate his whole body. It burned a microscopic tunnel through his brain tissue. However, the damage was horrific. As the weeks went by, the skin on the back of his head and on his face began to peel off. It revealed the path of the beam. The doctors could literally see the line where the protons had incinerated the flesh and bone. He lost hearing in his left ear. The nerves on the left side of his face were completely destroyed, leaving that side, but he didn't die. Against all odds, against all medical textbooks, Anatoli Bugorski survived the initial phase. He was discharged from the hospital, but the strangest side effect was yet to come, a side effect that would turn him into a living scientific curiosity decades later. Bugorski returned to work. Yes, you heard that right. He went back to the same facility. He eventually completed his PhD. His intellect remained largely intact, although he suffered from fatigue and occasional seizures. The brain is a resilient organ. It rewired itself around the hole the beam had punched through it. But as the years turned into decades, people started noticing something unsettling about Anatoli's face. We all age. We get wrinkles, our skin sacks. We look older. The right side of Anatoli's face aged normally. It developed wrinkles, crow's feet, and the lines of a man who lived a hard life in Russia. But the left side, the side where the proton beam exited, it remained smooth. It remained frozen in time. It looked like the face of a 19-year-old boy. This wasn't a miracle of youth. It was a consequence of destruction. The radiation had been so intense that it didn't just kill the skin cells. It obliterated the nerves and the ability of the tissue to regenerate or change. It was a Botox from hell. The paralyzed muscles couldn't form wrinkles, and the irradiated skin was preserved in a state of suspended animation. Anatoly lived 4 years in obscurity. The Soviet Union didn't like to talk about its accidents. It was only after the fall of the Iron Curtain that his story came to light. He became a legend in the scientific community, the man who stuck his head in the particle collider. But his life wasn't easy. Because the accident was top secret for so long, he struggled to get disability medication. He had to pay for his own epilepsy medicine. He was a living miracle, ignored by the state that created him. In 1996, he applied for disability status, trying to prove that his seizures were caused by the accident. The bureaucracy was slow, but the evidence was undeniable. The man had a hole in his skull and a face that was half old, half young. Today, Anatoli Bugorski is still alive. He is in his 80s. He outlived the Soviet Union. He outlived the U-70 Accelerator. He outlived the doctors who predicted his death in 19... His story is a terrifying reminder of the invisible powers we play with. We build machines to simulate the Big Bang, to create energies that haven't existed since the beginning of the universe. And we put these machines in the hands of fallible humans who sometimes forget to change a light bulb. Bugorski was lucky. If the beam had hit a vital blood vessel or a slightly different part of the brainstem, he would have dropped dead instantly. Instead, he became the only human specimen of proton beam survival. There's a dark irony in his survival. The radiation that should have killed him ended up preserving a part of him forever. He carries the mark of the speed of light on his face. If you could choose, would you trade half your face's movement for eternal youth on that side? It's a high price to pay. Science is full of martyrs, but rarely do we see a survivor like Anatoli. He is the ghost in the machine, the man who looked into the barrel of the universe's gun, saw the flash, and lived to tell the tale. Subscribe to the channel if you want more stories of impossible survival, and comment below. Do you think the Soviet Union hid other accidents like this? Or is Bugorski truly one of a kind? I'll see you in the next file.